This.
Can you please state your full name?
Are you being serious?
Yep.
Queen, isn't it?
We never saw the Queen's speech.
And your name is?
We watched Rory Brenner on the
Listen
other
to Emma.
side.
No, listen to
I
Emma.
can't. All I can hear is other people.
Listen to Emma then.
So,
All right, Emma.
So your full name is?
Did you really mean that?
Yeah.
Oh, Pamela Mary was Taylor, is now Perkins.
Okay. And your specialist subject for today?
I beg your pardon?
A potted history of
My
Pamela
life.
Perkins.
My life.
Your life.
My life.
Can you? What's the earliest memory that you can recall?
I have a vague idea I remember being pushed in a pram, but the clearest thing I remember is seeing my baby brother in his cot and being absolutely amazed.
And
That's, I
what
think,
sort of
the
age?
earliest.
So you must have been about 3 at the time.
Yeah.
I was 4. Yeah, so I'm not remembering far back, am I?
Was that in a hospital or was that at
Oh, no,
home?
that was at home. That was at home. And I remember that the midwife that my mother had, and in those days you had them and they stayed in the house for about a fortnight, was absolutely horrible to me. She only liked babies, and I didn't want to leave my mother. And when she was attending to my mother, she made me get under the bed.
Mm.
She was absolutely horrible. I was very glad to see the back of her.
Can you remember what she looked like? This midwife?
No, not really, except, you know, fierce.
So what would the midwives do for the other week and a half?
Well, in those days, you didn't get out of bed for a fortnight. You were attended to. And she looked after the baby, and she looked after my mother, and she washed her, and she fed her. And I don't know who looked after me. It certainly wasn't her.
What did fathers do at that time?
Not a lot. No, they didn't. They didn't ever attend the birth at all. Although my mother had my brother, about an hour, so there wasn't much trouble there. You want any more information about the birth?
Okay. And so moving on to school.
Moving on to school. I was very, very happy in my primary school. I went to a convent school. I know I had trouble when I first started because, like my granddaughter, I used to wet my knickers very early on, and that took a bit of conquering. But I was very, very happy, very happy. The nuns were sweet, and I was very shy, but I was very happy, and I did quite well. I don't know why, but I did.
And Dominic wanted to know, can you remember the name of your best friend at primary school?
I can't at primary school. I can only remember one name into my head, and that's gone. No, I can't remember. I can't remember any of them, really, because I left when I was 10.
And was it a mixed primary school?
Yes, but only little boys. When they got to, I don't know what age, but they were only the little boys that went there, very little. And then I suppose it must have been an infant class or something that took boys, but once they got past that stage, there were no boys. But it was a strange. They started doing subjects there which we didn't. We would have thought you'd have started in the secondary school, really. We did French and we did algebra and we did geometry and things like that, which were quite early on, really, when you think about it. But my arithmetic was appalling. Never did fractions, not till I got to the secondary school.
And what was your secondary school called?
Harrow Girls' County School, and it was a good school, but I used to have to walk to it right over Harrow Hill. Took about a half an hour.
Did you have a uniform?
Oh yes, horrible uniform. Square neck cotton blouses and tunics with plain navy girdle things. And then if you were very good when you were further up the school and you managed to play for a school team, you got a really wide brown and pink girdle. and that was the sort of highlight of your life.
So did you play for the school team?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
What game?
Hockey.
What position did you play?
Centre.
So can you...
And I was hockey captain of the school.
So what can you remember enjoying about school? And
What did I enjoy? I liked my school. I really did like my school. I enjoyed the sixth form very much indeed. I just enjoyed school. When we first started off, there were a gang of us, and we used to do things all together. And then further up the school, I became friendly with a friend I've got now still, Beryl, and we used to do things together. No, I enjoyed school. We did quite a lot of amateur dramatics, and I liked that. We did some quite... Somebody's laughing, I should shut up.
I'll get to.
did you have to do home economics?
No, you had to... No, if you were any good at French, you did Latin, and if you weren't very good at French, you did... they didn't call it home ec, they called it cookery. So I had to do Latin, which I loathed. But I am quite glad I did it now, because it's quite useful.
So at what point did you leave school?
I left school when I was 19. Yeah, I was a bit old. It was a bit silly, really, because I decided that I wanted to go into medicine very late, and by that time I'd dropped Latin, so I had to have that. You had to have Latin in those days, so I had to start that again. And I'd never done chemistry, so I had to do what would be O-level chemistry. And I was doing A-level maths and A-level zoology and A-level physics and A-level botany, and it was all far too much. And I got ill. I had an abscess in my ear, and I got madly behind with all my notes. And so the war had come, and everybody was leaving school, and so I decided to leave school.
So
like
did you
that,
did you
and
get a
chucked
job?
it all.
And leave the code.
Sorry? Oh, what am I mucking about? Sorry.
Did you what war work did you get involved with?
Oh, don't. And my first job, I had to go to what do you call it? Labour exchange, really it was. And my job was addressing and filling out forms, calling people up for their medical in the army. And it was so boring. But I met my husband's sister there, and that's how I came to meet my husband.
So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Not a lot. Well, I just got taken home and he fancied me. I was frightened of him, actually.
Had you courted anyone else before?
Not courted, dear. I had boyfriends, but not courted. No, I hadn't. I hadn't courted. What?
Names.
I'm not going to give you any names, no. No.
So how did you overcome your fear?
Fear of what?
Fear of your husband-to-be.
Oh, I just got used to him. But he seemed so much more grown up than I was. So much more. I was very, very immature, to say the least. Anyway, no, I just got used to him, I suppose.
I didn't realise he wasn't so mature after all.
No, too true. But the war was funny in those days because the war did make things happen sort of rather intensely. It was a funny time.
So did you get to see a lot of each other during the war, or were you apart?
Oh no, no, we didn't see him. He went into the we went up to Blackpool where my father was evacuated, and he was up there a few weeks. I think he got called up in December, and then I didn't see him for can't remember if it was 3 or 6 months, and then it was only every 3 months. if that. And then he'd have a very short leave. But then he had 2 lots of embarkation leave, but he didn't ever go. So, and yeah,
So whereabouts did you get married?
in Blackpool. And we had about 6 people at the wedding. We walked to the tram in the rain, and we had a cardboard cover on our cake, and I left my handbag in the train. And when we were in the hotel, well, I've told this tale 100 times. I have. Daddy rang, thought he was turning out the light, and rang for the chambermaid. So, because it was one of those pair switches. And then we went back many years later, quite recently really, to see if we could find the hotel. And I think we found the hotel, but we just couldn't relate to it at all. It didn't look the same. We weren't even sure it was the same hotel in the end. We had 3 days, that was all. I don't know that we had 3 days. I had to go to work on the morning I was married, because he had more time off than I did. But we only were allowed 1 day off to have the wedding. So they let me go. I went into work on the Saturday morning and I worked till 10 o'clock, and they counted that as a day. So that I had the remainder of Saturday when we got married. We had Sunday and then the Monday where I had off. And I had to come back.
And did you have anywhere to live, or were you?
No, because I was up in Blackpool in digs with my family, and he was in the army.
So when were you first able to set up home together?
Oh. Not until 1946. 1946. And then we didn't have a home. We were down in Harrow at my mother's place. And then we went down. By that time I had Susan, who was by that time 2 or 3. 3. And then we had Stephanie. And then when Stephanie was very tiny, we went down to Whitstable. And we lived in the bungalow at Whitstable for 3 years, where Nicky was born. And it was horrible. I hated it. But there we are. And then we came back up to London. I didn't see where we were going to, Stan saw where we were going to live, but I didn't see where we were going to live, this new flat in Portobello Court. But we came up there and we were there for 20 years. And that's where all you kids remember. More than you do where we are now.
Has anyone got any other questions?
Where's the most interesting place you've travelled to, and why?
Most interesting place, I think, is Venice. Venice is very interesting.
Any particular reason?
Well, because of its whole setup with its no traffic and all the water and the bridges and it's a fascinating place, Venice. Another fascinating place is Bruges. Again, it's quite nice because there are lots of canals and things there. The nicest holiday I ever had was in France, in a little village called Besse. And that was only nice because we just went walking, and it was just lovely. I enjoyed it more than Stan.
What do you think's been the best invention over the last 25 years?
Oh my God. Artificial knees. Mm.
That's a good one.
Anyone else?
The table, so you have to get close.
Let's move it. If you could meet anyone, who would it be?
I beg your pardon?
If you could meet anyone, who would it be?
Meet anybody. Famous somebody. Oh dear. Oh dear, that's difficult.